Welcome everybody. Today we are going to talk a bit about perceiving through the senses. And in many situations, an event is presented in more than one sense. Think of food, which you can smell, which we can taste, which we can see. Or speech, which we can see and which you can hear. And we have to integrate these signals, and we're getting benefits from it. Think of a party, a loud party. You still understand the person you're talking to. This is because we integrate the information we see and the information we hear. But therefore, we have to fulfill some basic principles. The first one is the temporal rule. Signals have to be close in time. Think of a good movie which is dubbed. You still believe the person is talking to you because the dubbing is good or bad. And signals have to be close in space as well. Think of a ventriloquist. You think the puppet is speaking because the puppet is very close to the speaker, to the source of the actual voice you hear. And there's a perceptual bias. We believe things according to our previous experience. Think about this cat. You don't expect this cat to bark, obviously. Our perception is also influenced by certain processes. One of them is attention. So what is attention? We all know what it is, but it's quite difficult to explain. And there are some very, very smart words like this about it. But try to do it in your own words. You probably fail. In psychology, we usually distinguish between endogenous and exogenous attention. Endogenous attention is attention we spend voluntarily. Think you're driving a car. You focus your attention on the traffic before you and not about your surrounding area. Exogenous attention, however, is an automatic capture of attention. You still driving that car and focus your attention like before, but now a child is running onto the street. You don't want to drive over the child, so you have to focus your attention upon it. Attention as well is not unisensory. We can spread our attention across modalities, and our senses compete for our attentional resources. Think you're reading a book, and now a spider is crawling upon your arm. You maybe not recognize the spider even, because you're so focused on what you see that you don't have any resources left to process what you feel. And that's all for the moment in introduction. Now we are going to talk about our different projects, and at first Marta will start with hers.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to talk about the dissociation between the reportable and unreportable perceptual phenomenon. The stimuli is reportable when we are concerned about that. On the other hand, it's not reportable when we are not concerned about that, but still it has an effect on our behavior. I start with a little example. Please tell me a job fast. Probably some of us end up with the nurse, because I was priming you before. Do you remember the picture of the nurse? And another key concept is the attention. As Stefanie mentioned, we can distinguish between endogenous and exogenous attentional mechanisms. And the reportability and the attention both really important, but the conjunction is our field of interest. Probably most of you bumped into the situation when in the late afternoon you went home and you didn't remember the path what you have taken. This is the so-called zombie behavior. On the other hand, you might address the question how we investigate that. The key concept is the saliency. What is saliency? Please try to look for a red spot on that table. It's not so easy, right? And what about now? It's way more easier. This is what's called saliency. This is an automatic phenomenon. And this is how we would like to go for our research. So we want to go for unreportable information where the endogenous attention is not involved, and the key concept is the saliency, which is boosted by the multisensory integration. And you could ask how we could do that. The binocular rivalry would be a nice approach. The binocular rivalry is when two unsimilar images are presented, but they are competing for the level of consciousness, and you just perceive one of them at one time. And this is the way how we could answer the question whether the unreportable information can be rescued for reportability, and whether any attentional mechanism plays a role in it. And now I give the...
So, another question we're interested in is in how we combine audiovisual information in time. That is, for instance, how we combine the sound of a jar breaking with its visual information. But first, it's important to understand the concept of simultaneity. We have to differentiate between three different audiovisual timings. It's well known that physical transmission times and neural transduction times of a sound and a light are different. Overall, auditory information is processed around 30 milliseconds before than the visual one. Then, if most of the times information we receive is asynchronous, how we perceive simultaneity? To address this question, we present different audiovisual asynchronies to the participants, simple flashes and beeps. And then they have to report whether they have perceived them simultaneous or not. From participant responses, we can plot perception of simultaneity in the y-axis as a function of the physical asynchronies we've been presented during the experiment. And as you could see here, it's very intuitive. So when the asynchronies are close to zero, perception of simultaneity is high. And as the asynchronies between the visual and the auditory modality are larger, perception of simultaneity decreases. If we feed this data, we could extract the point of subjective simultaneity, which is the point at which an audiovisual event is perceived more simultaneous. Interestingly, this point is subject to experience. So it has been shown that after a short exposure to an audiovisual asynchrony, in which, for instance, vision always is preceding an auditory stimuli, perception of simultaneity changes, so that after this exposure, you perceive more simultaneous audiovisual events in which vision has to be presented more in advance than audition than before. So from these studies, we could extract that perception of time is plastic. And what we are currently studying is whether other cognitive processes, such as attention, also could change the way we combine audiovisual information in time.
Coming back to the topic of attention. So we know that we can spread attention towards events, but we also can spread attention towards abstract features, such as time. When we spread our attention, we are faster, we are more accurate in answering, and we modulate our brain oscillations. You may be asked yourself now, what are brain oscillations? Well, this is a brain. And even this brain of Homer Simpson has neurons. And if a neuron gets a signal, it fires an action potential. Many action potential give us a firing rate of the neuron. And the firing rate of a population of neurons, well, this is an oscillation. An oscillation can be categorized according to its frequency. A frequency is the time an oscillation needs to go through one period. And there's, for example, the alpha oscillation, which is between 8 and 14 hertz, and which is closely related to attention. As you can see here, when we expect an event, like in these blue areas, the power, so the amplitude of our alpha frequencies, is going down. And why I'm talking about this? Why is this important? Well, it's directly related to the goals of my research. I want to study how temporal attention is affecting our brain oscillations in multisensory paradigms, and I want to know how is this related to our behavior. That's all we're going to say. Thank you for your attention, And thanks to our group.